Well, hello everyone, and welcome back, and welcome to Into the Darkness, the show where we take a dive into the horror genre, be it mostly film at the moment, but we will eventually be covering books and games and anywhere else we care to, dive into at any point. My name's Steve Fitzgerald, and I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Sara Lynham today. How you doing, Sara?
Hello. Yeah, not too bad. Thank you very much. Happy to... I was just about to talk about the weather again. I feel like I do this every time. I was like, I'm so happy that it's not so hot anymore. Oh my God.
It is,
you can tell that I'm fully acclimatized to the UK now because I'm like, we have to talk about the weather. That's a thing that we should do.
We do, absolutely that. And it's worth talking about because we're finally in a moment where we are probably going to soldier through today's episode without trying to not put across how incredibly warm we both are in our separate rooms with our windows closed, and for yourself in the tiny, compartment, cooking by the second.
Yeah. Yes,
so
much more of a slow cooker moment now. It's not so warm. It's not a full oven. It's just a slow cooker.
That's good. That's good to hear. That is good to hear. And we are today continuing our journey through the Hellraiser franchise. We've covered films 1 to 3. So we've had some very, very good and some very much not so good so far. I think we were sort of fairly in agreement on Hellraiser 3 maybe being sort of not so much a little dip, but quite a massive sort of drop-off for the franchise. And we'd love to know what everyone that's listening thinks as well, whether they actually, love the third film or whether they agreed with us that maybe it's not the direction they foresaw or wanted or particularly enjoyed with the franchise. But we continue on our journey with Hellraiser Bloodline, or is it is Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, but from this point onwards, really, the sequels drop the numbers and we just get sort of one word titles. We have Bloodline now, and we're heading off to Inferno and Hellseeker next episode. And that's a good point to bring up, actually, is that after today's episode, we will be doing double feature episodes for the rest of the franchise. So it will be two films per episode. So Bloodline today, and then next episode in a couple of weeks' time will be both Inferno and Hellseeker. And after this is Hellraiser Bloodline is the last film that is theatrically distributed in the Hellraiser franchise. I'm not actually sure whether it got a theatrical release in the UK. I certainly remember as a kid seeing it in Blockbuster on the video shelf. I don't know whether it got a theatrical release, but after this point, very much direct to video and direct to DVD for the journey. Hellraiser Bloodline, directed in the credits at least by Alan Smithy, but really directed by Kevin Yeager, who we have spoken about on the podcast before, who is the creator for the design of the Chucky doll, amongst many other amazing horror achievements, but of particular interest to us because we've done the whole Chucky franchise, which you can go back and listen to if you haven't already. So predominantly directed by Kevin Yeager, but also we'll get into in a minute, not just his work and not his name on the credits either. So let's talk about our expectations going in, shall we? Because as we've said, didn't particularly like Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, if at all, really. Although I think we did a reasonable job of trying to at least find something good to talk about last time. How did you feel going into Bloodline, Sara?
So I had, I'm not going to lie, really low expectations after number 3. So I was thinking, okay, we'll see how this goes. And I think I kind of thought we've lost a lot of what I was hoping from the franchise in number 3. So I kind of figured it would be more on the same vein. I knew 2 things going into this. I had heard Pinhead in space as a sentence, and also this is the one that spans the most time, before current time and after current time. So I was like, okay,
Sure.
I have no idea. I mean, I guess, you know, the name Bloodline does kind of give that away, that there's probably going to be some sort of generational thing going on. So that was where I was at going into it. Didn't know who would be back either, or but, you know, I figured Pinhead would be. Didn't know if any of the other previous characters from 3 or 1 or 2 would be around.
Were you hoping that DJ Cenobite would make their triumphant return?
My absolute favourite Cenobite in all the world, obviously, yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. What a good idea. Yeah, that's right. It's episode 4, but we're not going to let it go. So, yeah. So when it first starts, because it really does, the theatrical cut of the film doesn't, build to going to space. We're sort of there from the very start. We have this, really sort of non-title sequence, which is just the titles popping up, with no background, with just a black background, and then we're just in space, aren't we? We're just there, and how did you feel about that? Just sort of going, oh right, here we are then.
So, well, I mean, to backtrack slightly, because you in the opening credits, I clocked Adam Scott's name. I didn't know that he was in this. I think it's actually his debut. So that was great. I went, oh, Adam Scott. Love Adam Scott. So very happy that he was going to be in the film. And I think maybe out of nowhere I was suddenly like, oh, I'm very excited. And then we were in space, and I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
another link. Yeah, I mean, it is, isn't it? It's such a throw. But Adam Scott being a nice link back, because we covered Hokum on several episodes ago. So it's really nice. That's actually been a really lovely thing. And something I really felt watching this one, actually, is that there are these threads of other films that we've covered sort of popping up. You got Kevin Yeager, Adam Scott. And, that was quite nice. So before we get into sort of the production, and then we talk about the film proper, and I guess a nice way forward would actually be to talk about the sections of the film, because this is almost an anthology film, in a way. What were your... So you watch the movie, we see... What were your thoughts when it finished, before we go in depth? What did you think? Did you have a good time with it?
Do you know what? Parts of it, yes, absolutely. The whole opening section and going back in time for the first time, I actually really enjoyed that section of the film. But there were a couple of moments where it felt like we were jumping the shark later on. But I did get to the end of it and go, that was still better than the third one. Still better than the third one. It may not have been what... I mean, I didn't really know where we were going. I didn't know, in what direction we would be going after the third one, and also whether or not anything would still be canonically aligned, or I just didn't know where we were going. It was nice to see that there was some continuity with where the Lament configuration had been put into the very foundations of a building. And I remember saying in the previous episode, being like, I hope that's a thing and not just ooh, isn't this fun? I was like, no, this is part of the architecture, and that actually becomes quite an important part of the story, which I thought was quite cool, actually. But I mean, it was fun. I don't think it was it's not an amazing film. I still think 1 and 2 are absolutely incredible. 3 feels like a flop for me. It just feels too corny, too cheesy. Whereas this one felt quite good, and I kind of liked where it was going, even if it did feel at times a little convoluted. I think some of the kind of concepts and some of the kind of consistency of Cenobites and demons and whatnot was getting a little bit not wishy-washy, but it just felt like there was a lot being thrown at the wall. But yeah, I did really enjoy it. I'd love to hear what you think of it.
So I think really most of what you said there is it mirrors completely how I feel about the film. Actually, I don't think it's its distance from perfection is far. Is it a great film? It absolutely is not. Is it a really ambitious, interesting film that shoots really, really high, and for reasons that we'll get into, falls short? I think so. It's a film that I've watched a ton more times than I've watched the third film, and I think so much of its flaws can be put down to its production, or just its being, as you say, throwing an awful lot out there, being more ambitious than it's able to pull off. But I like it. I think it's a fun movie. And it restores. It does some things that go a long way to sort of healing some mistakes it made in the last film, and then does a ton of stuff that, as you say, you saying there about the sort of confusion between sort of like Cenobites and demons and stuff. I mean, basically what the Cenobites are in this film, if they're even called Cenobites in this film, which I'm not really sure they are, there becomes this sort of push and pull between, are they demons from hell or are they Cenobites from the labyrinth, and that at this point reaches, I think, this, who knows, really. There is so much that goes unexplained, so much that could do with some extra background, really. There's some, I would agree with you. I think it's a fun movie. I like the film. It's definitely one I rewatch, and I don't, hate rewatch it like I did, which I felt like I tried really hard not to do with the third film, and then, got sort of 40 minutes in with the third one and went, I just, I'm really trying, but I can't, I just can't find much to hold on to. Whereas I never feel like that with this. So let's talk a bit about the production of Bloodline. And then I think, it might be cool to do sort of a past, present, and future evaluation, if that sounds fun to you.
Yeah, that sounds great, yeah.
Cool. So Hellraiser Bloodline is the last film to have any involvement from Clive Barker. It is, after this point, he is basically removed from having any involvement with these films. Here he's an executive producer. I do think that him, along with Peter Atkins, who is the writer, who also wrote the second and third films, I do think there was a collaboration on what this film would be about, and that it would be interesting to track the bloodline of the creator of the Lament Configuration from a perspective in the past, the present, and of course Pinhead in space. Created, produced again by Dimension and Miramax, and with all of the horrendous sort of fucking baggage that comes along with that. And here is a situation where, they have a script. Kevin Yeager is hired to direct, and according to behind the scenes stuff, the script was okayed. It was starting to be shot. It was very ambitious. It was more expensive than they wanted it to be. And then after a very, very, very troubled shoot, Miramax watched it, and in their, arrogance, infinite wisdom, of course, that they have decided that they didn't like the film. It needed extensive reshoots. It was almost 2 hours long, so it was far too long for them, and they wanted to correct what they saw as the faults with the movie. Kevin Yeager is against this. He doesn't agree with the what they want to do with it, so he leaves the project. Director Joe Chappelle is brought in to not just do, I think according to Doug Bradley, not just to do reshoots, but shoot entirely new scenes that weren't there before, add new stuff in to make the film more commercial, more whatever they felt was their vision for it. The film is completed. It now has a runtime of 84 minutes, so loses half an hour really in the edit and its new stuff. Kevin Yeager says that he does not want his name on the film, and so the director's name is Alan Smithy, which is the name given to films whose directors have basically disowned them and said they want nothing to do with them. So that is what we have as the final result here. Maybe I think that I think I respect Yeager's decision here to not have his name on, but to be honest, there are far worse films out there to be attached to. But I do think when you have a specific vision for your film, and the producers come in and basically tear apart what you wanted, I get it. I think that it's a completely understandable decision here.
Yeah, and I think it it shows now, because I feel like I didn't know that backstory at all in terms of the production side of things, and I think it does show in the film, because it feels there are moments that feel rushed. We have to kind of skip over plot because it's like we don't have time, and I'm like, what do you mean we don't have time? You could embellish on this, or you could split it into 2 films, or I feel like maybe because it was 96, we didn't have so many director's cut versions of things that were coming out where it was like, oh no, this is what we intended. There's no kind of flexibility to offer that to people if they wanted to see it and have a theatrical cut for anyone who was like, oh no, I'm happy to just watch the production house version of it. It's a shame. But yeah, I also agree that if you're not happy with having your name attached to it, then yeah, take yourself out of it.
Yeah, and there's a difference, isn't there, between sort of directing a film and looking at the end result and going, oh, I've really not captured what I wanted to here. That's still your movie, for better or for worse, but here that's not the case. Whatever was wanted isn't, the final edit was not his, the film is not his. But, I don't... Do I think that if we could go back and, put together the near 2-hour cut, do I think the film would be better? Yes. Do I think it would suddenly become a masterpiece? No. There's plenty of indication there that, some of it's a little bit sort of hokey and, that, some of the dialogue isn't the best. Although, to be fair, compared to the last movie, I think Pinhead has some absolutely dynamite lines in this. I mean, I think he has some really cool stuff to say, he's maybe used a little bit more than I'd like him to be, but nowhere near as sort of egregiously as in the last film. And you really get a sense that Doug is reinstating the sort of menace of Pinhead rather than the sort of villainy of the last film. I think that does come across definitely here. But yeah, there is, there's obviously I think you could fill a book on the background of this film and what sort of went on during production. But that's a rough outline of what was being dealt with as this film was being made, and I do think it goes some way to add context to the finished result, for sure. So. We, at the beginning of the film, we actually start in space. As we've already said, we are suddenly chucked in there at the end, as it were, and then that, the future story is used both as a section of the film and as a wraparound, isn't it, to tell the rest of the story, which I don't think was the original vision. I think that the original vision was to go, past, present, future, and sort of go through the timelines, but that isn't so much what we get here. And so the story is, that we are following the bloodline, the history of Le Marchand, the creator of the Lament Configuration, and sort of the effect that creating the box has on his family as we go through time. So we begin at the future, but shall we head back to the past and talk about this, opening section and what happens here? Because I think I think it's my favourite of the three. I think it's sort of, or at least has the most potential of the three to find out, how the box came about, and has some cool characters and some cool ideas. So what did you think of the past element of Hellraiser Bloodline?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably the best bit. And like I said, when watching the film in full, when we were back in time, I was like, actually, this is really interesting. It's cool to kind of discover. Yeah, I mean, I love an origin story. So it's interesting to see where everything could kind of started, and that like it was kind of just a life's work, to make the best puzzle box. There wasn't kind of anything sinister behind it, but because it became affiliated with people who were doing bad things, and unfortunately he got tied to it without even really necessarily wanting to be. He was just commissioned to make it, right? Like he kind of didn't really know what he was getting himself in for. I really like Valentina Vargas, who's playing Angelique. I think she's like exquisite. She's just beautiful, but also terrifying at the same time. But I was a bit confused about. This is like the first moment where I was like, "What is happening?" So obviously, this person has been brought in by Adam Scott and the Duke. I can't remember his name.
Yes, we have the Duke de Lille. So we have let's quickly go through the cast that we have in our opening section, and then we'll talk about what happens in it. So we have Bruce Ramsey as Philippe Le Marchand, and he'll also be playing John Merchant and Paul Merchant as we go through the film. So we have our one actor who plays Le Marchand or Merchant throughout, past, present, and future. We have, as you just mentioned, Valentina Vargas, who plays Angelique, although her voice is overdubbed in the film by another performer. So
I didn't even clock that.
No, and
that's the second time I haven't clocked it.
Oh no, but you
didn't clock it for Frank either. So
to be fair, every time you've said, "Oh, I did," my first viewings of these films, I had no idea that had happened as well. It's just not something I was looking for. And it's not, the overdub is reasonably well done. It matches, so I get it. I get why why you wouldn't notice that at first, because I didn't either. We also have, Adam Scott here as Jacques, and he is the assistant of the Duke de Lille, who is played by Mickey Cottrell. And I just want to, before we go into it, say that I really love his performance. The Duke is it's a really cool character, obviously based around that sort of Marquis de Sade, sort of deviant French aristocrat. And I think he looks awesome. I would watch a film about his backstory. Super cool. And we also have Charlotte Chatton, who is Genevieve Le Marchand, who plays Le Marchand's wife here. Wife. Sorry, I had my double checking I wasn't making a mistake there. But yeah, that's our principal cast here for our opening. And this bit tells the story of the box very quickly. The box's sort of creation, and I like that bit. And I've just thought of it now, actually, as we're talking, that there's a parallel between seeing the box being made. You're nodding, so I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing as me. And seeing the glove for Freddy in A Nightmare on Elm Street 1, just we get these close-up shots of this iconic horror, object being made, and that's really cool as a horror fan to see this thing, get put together.
Yeah. I was also thinking of like the creation of the Chucky dolls as well. We get these really great little close up of like individual sections of the doll being created in the same way that we see the sort of the first hand drawing of the box, and then he's sort of piecing together the wooden version of it before it's got any of the like outer layers. And I was like, this is very I think it's really cool. And I think having it's such an iconic piece that's throughout all of the films. It's very cool to kind of get to see where that's come from in the first place. And there's something quite like when you see something being made like that, it almost kind of you wonder how it gets its power in the first place. But I guess when you see how precise these little movements are and all this kind of like calculation, but also like it's imbued with this sense of like passion because of the toy maker. It's no wonder it's got that power behind it.
Absolutely. There's a line in what does the Duke say at one point to the Mushroom? As precise as your pieces, I think is something he says. And there is this strong link between sort of the occult and mathematics and, you know, angles and lines, and, you know, so you get a sense that you would need someone of sort of exquisite craft to make something that will be used, because everything must be you know, exactly right here. And you know, this whole bit, you know, we see that being made, and Le Marchand's wife, you know, she says, oh, so it, you know, when she sees it in action, you know, says, oh, so it doesn't really do anything, you know, and you know that that sort of strikes me as, you know, that before it becomes, you know, as with anything, before it carries its value in that way, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't make sense to someone, you know, what is this thing that's been made. What did you so we have, you know, we have the you know, this family unit here, and soon to have a child, which of course we, you know, will now know will carry the bloodline on. And then we have this really fantastic scene with you know, not yet Angelique, but the woman that will become possessed by the demon Angelique, the Duke and Jacques, and they bring this, you know, girl into the dining room of the Dukes, and we have this really sort of wonderful exchange, which is all quite sort of heightened. It's not the most subtle scene in the world, to be fair, but just it really does capture that element of sort of the decadence of everything, and the you know, a different way of summoning that we haven't seen before, because they you know, there's a concern that she'll cut herself before the ritual can begin, and that she must be unchristened, he says, doesn't it? As unchristened, so I'm told. So there's all these elements of, you know, needing things to be precise and exact so that a demon can inhabit her body, so Angelique can come forth. And you were a fan of all this bit as well? Yeah, you liked all this stuff.
I mean, I loved it. Like, visually, just like great to watch and just really interesting. I was confused about the idea of the demon coming and possessing, and so Angelique, you know, exists now in on Earth. But I guess, like, and the more I think about it, at this point, we've only really known the Cenobites to come into existence through unlocking the puzzle box. But the puzzle box has only just been created, so clearly there were other ways. And also, I think there's I can't remember if it might be the second film, where they talk about how there are different ways to access the labyrinth. So in my head, I was like, when I watched it for the first time, I was like, why? How is it that we can have a demon that's just come onto Earth? How has this happened? But then I think it's because we're kind of aligning more with this concept of Christian hell, I think, and the sort of possession element of it feels a bit more like that. Whereas I was sort of thinking, certainly based on the second film, that it was a little more science fiction and a little more. Little less specific in terms of the definition of hell. Whereas I think a demonic possession feels, for me, very specific. So while I like it, I mean, I like what they were doing, and I love the character of Angelique, and I love the Duke and Jacques, and the way that the whole interaction is happening, and getting to know the origin of the Lament Configuration. But I'm still a bit like, this wasn't what I thought we were doing to start with. So it still feels a little bit like we're going down a path which I think was kind of implied in number 3 that has veered us off from where we were in number 2.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think I can enjoy this film while acknowledging that, as you say, they're almost taking a certain amount of with the law, a sort of easy way out. So we just live in a world of sort of, you know, gods and devils and demons and angels, and you know, we're summoning a demon to possess a body from hell, and I do think one, you know, because I've seen the film a few times, and I've also watched, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, but a work print of the film, which is has been available for sort of a long time through sort of, you know, fan trading and stuff, but did see sort of a more complete version released on Arrow Films' quartet of Hellraiser films more recently, which their 4K release, which is on there. It's a VHS print, but it does let you see the film like that. But yeah, we just are not. Yeah, I agree with you. We're not getting the world that those first two films are set in, and you have to sort of go, right, okay, so where are we going with this? I do like the concept of, you know, once they start this ritual, that they you know, that almost her skin is emptied out, and then the demon fills it back up again. And we also get a shot of her sort of skinned legs being pulled away, and it does look like that classic Hellraiser 1 and 2 skinless body, you know. So there's something about skin, isn't there, in this franchise, I think, or flesh, I guess would be more
flesh.
And so we witness here the birth of Angelique, and the Duke, you know, reiterates something he's obviously told Jacques before, but for the audience we're told that, you know, a summoned demon is under your control unless you stand in hell's way, which is quite a cool idea, I think. I quite like it.
Yeah, it also, I think it gives a sense of danger, right? So whilst you feel it's almost like you haven't quite earned this power because you are still technically an agent of hell, even if you're in control of this demon, there are still limitations. I quite like that there's sort of a structure, and there's rules. And if you know, well, we find out what happens when you get in the way of hell.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I just realised I just gave that background about the work print and then didn't explain why I mentioned it at that point, which was that in the work print version, this whole moment, as it were, the work print that I've seen starts with the first scene is this scene between the Duke and Jacques and Angelique. And so you don't see anything of Le Marchand making. You see the box being made during the credits. There's actually something to look at during the credits, but you don't see Le Marchand, and the first scene is this one. So what you actually get is that this demon is kind of summoned, you know, very much almost independently of, you know, any sort of rules of the box. And I think what the work print does do is that the work print's like just over an hour and 20 minutes, so it's even shorter than this film. But weirdly, it does give a little bit of more context. There are moments that are cut from the work print that I think, that would have been really helpful if that had been in the film, because there's so much here, as you've already said, that is kind of unexplained or half-baked, and you're just sort of, you know, like the motivations in the in the present section that are coming up, they're so undefined, you know, ill-defined, and you get that there's sort of a conflict going on, but you don't really know why. I don't think so anyway. I don't know whether it was maybe more clearer to you than it is to me when I watch it, but I don't think you ever really know what the stakes are in this film. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like there's almost a kind of, I mean, I don't know if the idea is that destiny, or, you know, it's going to happen this way regardless. So essentially, merchants, like, whatever he's creating, whatever he's making, it almost feels like it comes from a part of him that he doesn't, I think he says something about having, like, memories that he like impossible memories to have.
Yeah, like your blood has memories. Yeah.
So it's as if he's gonna keep making this, or in the pursuit of the light box, basically. But yeah, it feels like he doesn't really know why he's doing it, with the exception of going, well, I found this paper. This paper has been handed down through generations of my family, and everyone's trying to make it. So that's what I'm doing. And it doesn't feel like. It feels like it's missing something, and the whole kind of the basement. I know that we're jumping ahead to the 90s at this point, but like
that's
the
all
whole
right. We can run
basement.
Back,
yeah, we can double back. But yeah, the basement and Pinhead being summoned in this section of the timeline, and this kind of all just bubbling underneath. It feels like they're not really connected, and I don't know how intentional. Like, is it meant to be like this is all secretly bubbling? Because it just feels like Merchant is just upstairs being an architect. Like, I don't know. It feels like it. Yeah, it feels like maybe is it meant to be like? Is there puppet strings being like? I don't know. But because ultimately the light box is. No, I was just going to say, ultimately, the light box is against the Cenobites. They don't want it. So, yeah, you'd think that maybe they'd be trying to intervene. But it also feels like maybe they don't always necessarily know what's going on. I don't know. Maybe there's something I've missed.
I know. I don't think there's something. I think that it is. That there's a lot of unanswered questions with it, and even as you say, I think all of the sort of the motivations for everyone, not just Merchant throughout the years, but also and it is something that I think the work print does give a little bit more clarity on in terms of what because Angelique and Pinhead, when Pinhead arrives, I'm not sure they want the same things, that there's, but even Pinhead's like motivation here, or his role in the order of I don't know, demons, I guess, for want of a better word, because he does say to Angelique later, hell is more ordered than it was in your time. And you think, but if Pinhead is the character that he was in the first two films, and he was a person during the, early part of the 20th century, how's he managed to climb the hierarchy of hell in like sort of 50 years, So there's all that stuff going on. I feel like in this film, Pinhead he feels like an ageless demon, that works for hell, and the whole idea that he was ever a person or a part of this order that dispenses, extreme pleasure and pain, is irrelevant. He doesn't seem remotely interested in, apart from a couple of moments between him and Angelique where there's sort of some sexual tension there, which was apparently meant to be actually this huge sort of adversarial approach between the two of them. They were meant to have a lot of confrontation, but obviously that got worked down into, there's a little bit of that, but that manifests in sort of sexual tension. But the whole idea of him dispensing these extreme acts on people to further, the furthest regions of pleasure and pain, he only really talks about suffering here. There's not really any, his goals here are not remotely the goals of, they're more aligned, even though I think he's a stronger character here, they are more aligned to the sort of want to dominate Earth that happens in Hellraiser 3 than they are this figure that gets summoned, who's part of a, this sort of, as you say, sort of cosmic science fiction horror religious sect from outside of, time that he is in the first two films. So if we head back to the past, briefly, and then we'll head back to all of the things we're talking about right now. So Angelique appears, and Le Marchand heads to the house where all of this has taken place. And, he witnesses the things that are going on there. And he also finds that the Duke has been attacked by Jacques and Angelique, and that they are basically in the other room, getting it on while he sneaks in. And this, I think most of these scenes, even if, the motivations aren't exactly right, they do kind of work. They establish, the meeting between Le Marchand and Angelique, although it's very brief, and there's a lot of references in this film when we get to the later sections of characters' past and their histories and knowing each other, but it's so fleeting here, isn't it? People meet each other for a few seconds, and it's sort of that creates history that we're meant to find quite profound or meaningful, and that doesn't really land, but it's all very entertaining.
Yeah, definitely. It just feels like if you were to look at sort of the two character timelines, they just kind of go boop and like touch at one point, and doesn't feel like they're really intertwined. Certainly not at this point. Like, it is, like you say, a very, very brief little moment. But I think this scene is great when he's going in and he's trying to sneak and grab the box back, and the Duke actually wakes up, and it's just, well, it seems like he does, but he sort of has like a last like and grabs him, and it's all very, very creepy and very cool. And it's just I guess it's nice because we see a bit of Le Marchand wanting to make sure that the bad stuff that's happening doesn't happen on account of something he's created, and not knowing how to deal with it. And doesn't he also talk to like looks like a coroner, I think?
Yes.
Who's very much an atheist and is just like, oh well, if you're saying that God doesn't exist, then the devil can't exist, and if you have made a box that that summons them or can contain them, then you can make something that can destroy them. And he's very kind of just matter of fact and going, here you go, here's your solution. But it feels like it's not as simple as that, which I'm glad, because if he just went home and made another box, I'd be like, oh well, that's a 20-minute movie and that's all we needed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, the demons and the Cenobites, if we can still call them that, are very much against it, and obviously very happy with having various portals to Earth.
Yes,
but that does feel quite different to what the original two were doing. Like it felt like it didn't necessarily feel like these demons, these Cenobites, wanted to be on Earth. It felt like what they wanted was people to come to them and to be sought out, as opposed to there being like almost like an aggressive kind of let's go onto Earth and let's just kill everyone. Like it doesn't feel as aligned with what I get. Like I feel like I'm saying that a lot. It's like, this is what I expected and this is what I got.
Yeah.
I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed. But it's fine. I still had a good time.
Yeah, there's an implication that they're not getting what they want in the first two films, the Cenobites. And it feels like, well, the goal is to bring what they're doing into the other world. But I completely agree that why do they want that when they've got what they want when the box is summoned? It feels like they understand their role in in the first, particularly in the first film, although we get very little time with them, that they are fulfilling their role and their what they believe. If they're the Order of the Gash, then they are an order that has its wants, and its wants are to, when the box summons, they come and they continue their transcendent work, if you like, their great work, which is there is an artistry to making people feel these extremes. That's what they're interested in. They don't want to do it to they don't wish to create a sort of, I don't know, a dictatorship on Earth. They are doing what they do, and I think that's where it feels like, even in the second, in the second film, even though I still think we're very much in the world of Hellraiser there, it starts to go a particular way, and then immediately in 3 they make this decision about Pinhead's goal is always to bring what they do into the world, but it's not really what they do. It's just to bring untold suffering to the world. So it feels much more one-dimensional. And here we have this battle of what becomes in Bloodline, this battle of light equals good and darkness equals evil. And we are making this light box because it's good, and because it is light, and because it was good, it will dispel the evil. And it's taking all of this grey area that we established in 1 and 2 and going, no, there are goodies and baddies, and demons and angels, and heaven and hell, and God and the devil. And it just, as you say, like, I think you can really enjoy this film on its own merits while acknowledging its problems. But that element of it feels like a loss, doesn't it? And I think only a couple of films in from the first two, we're still dealing with that. We're dealing with that loss.
It's still very fresh. Still too soon. Yeah, I feel like what I liked about the first, definitely the first one, and the the source material, the novella, is that it feels like the concept of good and bad is not what we're looking at. It's almost the human condition and this kind of like desire for more, and a sort of almost like a like greed and never being fully satisfied, like insatiable kind of idea, as opposed to good and bad. Like I don't think the idea was that they are good or bad, because if you're seeking out what they have to offer, how does that make them bad? You were the one who opened the box and who sought this this experience. I think it's fine for characters like I've completely forgotten her name. The daughter,
Kirsty.
Yeah. Characters like Kirsty, who that's not what they're seeking out, but they shouldn't have to. I don't think they should have to suffer because they've got involved by accident. But I also like that the universe of the Cenobites feels very like they love what they do, and they want to do more of it, and they want people to experience this, and even if they don't know it, maybe they'll enjoy it, kind of thing. Like I just feel like that kind of all of that is just lost because, as you say, we've gone into light good, dark bad, good guys and bad guys. I'm like, no, it was way more grey, wasn't it? Like in those first two films. That's exactly it. And then when we, and that really starts to come to in this, if we move now into the we're now heading to 200 years, isn't it, into the future, into 1997, where I'd forgotten at the end of Hellraiser 3 the putting of the configuration into the foundations of the building. So when I saw that when we watched the last one, I was like, oh, they do actually sort of like work that into the full film, and it's really the only thing I think that sort of survives into the next, because this now starts to do what to create a more standalone experience, doesn't it? That you could probably jump into Bloodline having not seen the others, and because, as we've already said, they don't sort of thematically or narratively follow what was set out in the originals, it can be enjoyed or not enjoyed on its own merits. And in this section, we have John Merchant, who is the descendant of Le Marchand. He lives with his wife and son. He's an architect, and in a lot of ways, an artist in a lot of ways, as architects are really, in the real sense of that he has created this incredible building that has, as we saw at the end of 3, almost by having the configuration in its depths, has a sort of really inspired in a way the architecture of it. And we head into this part of the story where Angelique, who has kept Jacques alive for 200 years, she sees that Merchant has appeared. She wants to travel to the US to continue her work. Jacques completely dismisses this, and is therefore has broken the rules of engaging with demons, and we satisfyingly get to see Angelique dispatch him before she heads to Merchant over in the US. And this is all at this point, this is all pretty cool. I think that's all a nice bit to continue the story. So let's talk about the sort of general impressions of the present section of the film before we go into it in a bit more detail. Well, how did you feel about this part of the film? I think I was still on board at this point. Like I hadn't got to a point where I was like, ugh, why are they doing that? I was still very much, okay, yes, this makes sense. This is natural progression. I liked how, like, stylistically everything looked different, and the acting style was different as well. I was like, yes, we're in the 90s, we're in America. It has like a different feel to it, to this the 200 years ago section. So it was really nice, actually, and I was really excited to see that we had this continuation of the building where the box was buried in the concrete from the previous one. I was like, oh, this is nice. We've got like a continuity thing. So yeah, I was very much still on board and willing to see what happens next. I'm now trying to think exactly what the moment was that made me go, oh no, we've gone off the rails.
Yeah, I think this is where, as I say, as you say, I think the beginning of this section starts fairly, it's all enjoyable and it makes sense to the story. But then when we have, Angelique meets Merchant, and Pinhead is summoned by really a sort of a nice callback to the first film, which is that Angelique almost takes the Julia role here of bringing a man. She says, we don't need to know each other's names, do we? And that all feels very much like it's an homage to the first film. And from the moment we sort of start to see the motivations but not really find them explained at this point in the film, and Pinhead is summoned, and we deal with the implications of a film that is really having to find a reason for Pinhead to be there rather than him, because this could easily have been Angelique and her tracking down Merchant over the centuries. That's a good plot line. But what of course is decided is that I'm not saying we shouldn't have Pinhead here, but once he appears, he does become very prevalent in the film, and I think Doug's great in this film. I think the character here is a huge improvement on what the character is in the third film. I love his look in this film. I really love his look. I love the sort of red that runs through the grid across his face, the sort of blue that they've embellished. It feels a little bit more... It is very different to the first two films, but feels much more of them. He looks much more, in control in this film. He gets loads of great lines, including one that's coming up in this section where he says... he's talking about pain, and he says, pain has a face. Let me show it to you, gentlemen. I am pain. And you just, love it, love it, love it. But he is also, once he's here, a deviation from the main plot, which is that he has his own role and agenda, and they're very much trying to give him a specific role, but he does end up being a little bit sort of murdery for the sake of it. Again, not really in what was intended. As we're on him, let's talk about Pinhead in this film. What were your sort of thoughts on Pinhead's character here compared to the last film?
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are aligned here. I think he comes across much, much stronger and very much in control of what's going on, which is great, but it feels, for me, I'm like, it's kind of arbitrary. It would have been cooler for me if Angelique had just remained this kind of lead demon working on this particular, thing with Le Marchand and his bloodline. If she'd just had a bunch of lesser demons or Cenobites under her control as little minions to go out and do stuff, I think that would have been great as well. I guess the thing is that Pinhead became so iconic through the first three films that I think if you hadn't had him in here somewhere, maybe people would have got upset and would have not felt like it was a real Hellraiser film without Pinhead. But it does feel like he just gets kind of shoehorned in and is kind of a little bit adversarial towards Angelique, who's obviously playing this massive long game in order to...
a very long game.
Seriously long game in order to sort out Le Marchand and the Bloodline. But like, it just... And, and that's why he shows up, essentially. He's like, oh, you're taking too long, and you should just, temptation can only get you so far, sort of thing as well. And maybe that's meant to be... Now I'm thinking about it. Temptation feels like that's part of what the first couple of films are doing. They're tempting someone to do something, to experience something, whereas the new version of Pinhead that we're getting is way more aggressive and is just going, well, I can't wait anymore. We need more interaction. We need more souls, or whatever it is. Whatever the goal is, I don't know. It just feels like going out to kill people feels like the goal, which is what I did not like in number 3. So it feels like that is still kind of the goal here. And it just seems less, it's not as interesting for me. But that does kind of feel like maybe that's why these films have moved in this direction, because that's the kind of, maybe that's like an underlying theme that's coming through from the production side. I'm more thinking like from studio side, that are going, no, we can't just have this slow burn temptation. Let's see what happens, and let's see what people are capable of. Let's just go out and make them suffer and inflict pain. Which, it doesn't seem in line with the themes of the first two, but it does feel like Pinhead now starts to embody what these two films are now trying to do. And we're almost so I think that's why he overshadows Angelique, because her technique, as it were, feels way more aligned with what I think the Cenobites in the Order of the Gash are actually trying to do. It's more enticing, it's more slow burn, it's more nuanced than hack and slash from Pinhead.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't to say that, like, I feel like, because I really think Pinhead is it's self-evident. Pinhead is one of the great horror icons. I mean, Doug's performance is amazing. The visual is incredible. It's just that they, after the first two films, have a problem of how to implement him in the film in a way that stays true to the character. That works, and that what works is that he is he's on the he's never the main adversary, and it's what the third film really doesn't get, I think, is that he's better when he's summoned and is there to come in at a particular point, whereas it does, as you say, feel like, it's almost certain that what the perception was, what puts bums on seats is lots of Pinhead murdering people, and that was you get why people would think that, because he's the most iconic part of the franchise, he's on every poster, but it's not the best way to implement the character. And although here I think it's just a huge improvement on the third film, and Doug's iconic, it does, because then by the time we get to, we're going to jump forward again a little bit and then come back, but by the time we get to the future section, Angelique has been completely sidelined to, essentially, more of like the chatterer, butterball sort of more silent character, and Pinhead is the main focus. And so that, the drive there is a bit confusing. In this present section, all of the bits with, the Merchant doing the presentation of the work he's doing in there, and explaining to Angelique about the trapping of perpetual light, light that self stays, and there is this moment in the work print cut, and as I say, the work print is shorter than the theatrical cut, but there are scenes in there that aren't in the theatrical cut, and there's more so, I think, in this section, a little bit more of an explanation as to what exactly is going on, and from Angelique, and I guess at this point Pinhead's idea is that this, obviously Merchant is creating this to create this thing, and light meaning good and power and all this stuff, but the demons or the Cenobites here see this as a way, if the box opens a little gateway, here, this building can be a massive gateway to basically let the forces of hell come into it. And as much as I think you can glean that from the theatrical cut, although it's never super duper clear, it's sort of explicitly said in the work print that is what's going on. And it could have been nice to just have that in there, even though it does, it's maybe self-evident, or maybe it's not. I do think some of the things they cut, it was more about just getting to the flashy bits than taking just a minute to go, right, so here are these characters' motivations, here's what they want, here's where they differ. I think that's primarily what starts to happen about halfway through the film, is that Pinhead turns up and the sort of focus of the film is unclear.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you're saying as well, that like it would have been nice to have had, I don't know, at least one person explain what the goal is, because thinking about it, yes, I do think it is relatively easy to get to a conclusion that yes, they whilst Merchant is looking to make something with perpetual light, they can see the potential for it to be dark, which is cool. I think it's interesting, and it's a nice kind of, okay, so he's working towards something, but if we can maybe convince him to go the other way, we can get a giant building size portal to hell, which I can see how that would be something that they would want. But it does that I don't think it's ever said it's definitely not said explicitly, because I'm only just coming to the conclusion that was obvious, and I hadn't really thought anything outside of just going, yeah, that's heavily implied, but at no point did they say this is what we're trying to do. Yeah. I mean, they just obviously wanted a really lean runtime so they could reduce the amount of time in between people having grim stuff happen to them at the extent of the story. And something that's really noticeable, I think, is around this time, Dimension didn't just make Hellraiser Bloodline, obviously making loads and loads of films, but one of the films is Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is the 6th film in the Halloween franchise. And for that film came out and got bad reviews. I think it's very similar. It's not as ambitious as Bloodline, but in its way, it's doing something really, really different with the Halloween franchise, looking into sort of the sort of occult elements that could potentially be, driving Michael Myers. And that is only sort of touched upon, superficially in the theatrical cut of the film. But a very similar thing happened. There was an earlier cut of the film that was dismissed. It was all re-edited. More gore was put in, and those elements sort of toned down. That was released. But in the background, over the years, this producer's cut had been circulating on VHS. And, everyone had it was sort of spoken about in horror circles, there's this producer's cut of Halloween 6, and it's the best Halloween film since the first one, because that's what happens when things can't be seen. And I eventually saw it, and I saw, a sort of tatty VHS cut of it, and, you can't really see what's, going on all the time. Anyways, when they eventually released Halloween 6 on, the Blu-ray and stuff, they did sort of give the fans what they wanted, and they released a nice pristine cut of Halloween 6, of the producer's cut of it. And when you watch it, I mean, much like if I think we saw a director's cut of Hellraiser Bloodline, would it be? Is it that film that sort of in the the hushed tones of horror circles that is as good, the best since the first Halloween film? It absolutely is not. But there's lots of interesting stuff in there, really, really interesting stuff, and it has this sort of slower atmosphere. That whereas in the theatrical cut there's lots of jump cuts and lots of sort of that fast editing, and you can see that in the work print of Bloodline as well, that this film was handed over that maybe wanted to take more time in between things, not have this sort of flashy style, not just be jumping murder to murder. And they took it and they went, no, hour and 20-minute runtime, nice and busy, please. MTV editing and all this stuff, and it just gives you a sense of what they wanted from the film, the producers, as opposed to what from all of their films at this time, rather than people actually wanting to make a film that wanted to do something, whether it was successful or not. And that's quite a long digression, but I think that it does give a good indication. The two films made quite near to each other, and both having similarities, that there is a bit more mood in the original, one of the earlier cuts, that isn't prevalent here. Yeah, and I guess also, like, I had a quick look at what else was coming out around the time of this. So in 1996, it would have been competing with like Mission Impossible, Independence Day, these, you know, big budget, really flashy, you know, big pieces that, you know, are very iconic as well. And I think they, you know, some of it is probably trying to compete with things like that. I'm not sure exactly what time of year all of these things came out, but I think like when you think stylistically of what those films are like, they're so bombastic. They're larger than life. They're really quick pace, and as you say, MTV like editing. It's very splashy and very like, you know. You don't have to worry about your attention span because it will just like jump around everywhere all the time. So yeah, maybe some of it's to kind of maybe it's of its time a little bit, and maybe it's like a taste thing. But I don't know. I think it's sad when that's the reason that we sort of compromise something that could be really, really good. Yeah. You know, because you can actually still make something that has gravitas, and it doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be. It should be able to hold its own. I don't think we should just pander to what we think people want to see. Yeah. But yeah, I'm also not a studio producer, and I'm not the one with the money, so I can say that. I'd be like, I want it to be good and creatively satisfying.
I think that, you know, we've only got to look. I think horror's in a really different place now to in the mid-90s. I think horror was trying to find itself again in the mid-90s, although there are lots and lots of really, really great horror movies. I think people sort of give the 90s a really bad rap for horror, but if you go back and have a look, there's loads of really cool stuff. But it did find itself, you know, just before Scream and then a few years later with the Blair Witch Project, like it was trying to know what to do. It had these franchises, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th, where they were trying to find their place in the 90s, but you know, it was diminishing returns, and I think that if we look now, you know, what we're seeing in cinemas nowadays, with the, you know, with critics not being so sort of snobbish, with studios that really care about horror, that want to release really, really cool horror, we're in a much better place to let directors do, you know, just saying like, here are the right, you know, like Evil Dead Burn, you know, and a few years ago Evil Dead Rise, you know, people saying to these, you know, up and coming directors, look, here's your ballpark to play with. We're going to be a bit more hands off, and we've hired you because you have a vision for this, and all we want to do is help you make your Evil Dead film, not what we want you to do with Evil Dead, your Evil Dead film. And that's why I think the three films that have happened over the last sort of 15 years or so, Evil Dead from 2013, Evil Dead Rise, Evil Dead Burn, managed to really stand out and take and show that you can do a franchise that has been going for ages and do something, you know, that within that ballpark that does something that is uniquely yours, and audiences will like it, and you can make something really, really good. Whereas here, you know, horror was rarely getting good reviews. You know, it wasn't in the place that it's in now, and it was being controlled by, frankly, for all of their many, many other, you know, horrendous character defects, shitty people, people that also only cared about getting something out there, getting it done cheaply, and just having Pinhead on the box to sell it. Yeah, you know, and that's really why there is just this huge, vast chasm of quality between some of the stuff that was happening in around this period, and, you know, if it had just been a bit later on, you know, as we will see, you know, that really, really cool stuff can be done within the framework if you just let people make their fucking movie, you know. Ran over ish until next episode, in which it will probably continue in earnest. But yeah,
100% agree.
Also, a weird, to go back to the sort of the end of this present section. The whole sort of big climactic moment in the present section where, they get pulled back into the box and Merchant is killed by Pinhead. There is a moment in the work print where Pinhead has a chain shoot out of his mouth, grip onto the ceiling and pull him up to where the configuration is forming itself. It looks really dumb, but I kind of think, people deserve to have seen that.
That sounds great, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
it does.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's really silly, but hey, we'd have all been, it's that bit where Pinhead has a train come out of his mouth, There are a couple of moments in the work print where Pinhead shoots chains out of himself rather than from, the void, as it were, and just use the void, Although I do like, and before we move on to the future section, I do really like the sequence with the twins. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this is a really, really cool moment. I love Pinhead with his hook fingers when he puts one into Angelique's chest and she sort of, throatily sort of moans at it and stuff. And also just what is done to the security guards, the twins here, is a death scene for the ages. Not even a death scene, is it really? But a mutilation scene for the ages.
It's very cool. I did think at the time, I don't know who these twins are. These two chaps that are like security guards, I guess, and they're just going, hang on a minute, that door isn't on our blueprints, and I'm like, this is very silly. And then them becoming like mutilated and this bizarre creature that we see when we jump forward into space. I'm like, that was cool. It was totally worth it. I don't care that it was a bit kind of random and arbitrary. That's fine. I'm happy for you to do that in order to make something like that, because I think the twins, I mean, are we just going to call them demons now? Can we still call them Cenobites? I'm just going to say demons.
I think we can use the term interchangeably, maybe.
Okay.
I do think that what happens to the two of them, it's weird, isn't it? Because it is, dangerously close to the I've got Cenobites at home from, Hellraiser 3, which is that you like being twins, eh? Well, what if, they're twins, so they don't want to be separated. But I think what works in this is its inherent meanness. There's something really sort of, flesh is so disposable in the third film. People being turned into Cenobites is so irrelevant, really. Whereas here, there is this element of like, what if, we take these two people and we, use this character element of them to make them suffer, in a particular way. And, it's a really cool effect sequence. Something that I was really surprised by watching the work print, actually, was I thought that the work print was going to be less gory, and they put in a load of gore later on to make it more, because that's what happened with Halloween 6. Is that the death scenes were more, because the Halloween series has never been one for gore, really. It's always been a little bit more based on atmosphere. And so they, the deaths are less bloody, but in the theatrical cut, they're more bloody. It's the opposite here, actually, strangely enough, is that it seems like you lingered on it a little bit more in the work print edition. And probably could have kept some of that gore in, really. I don't think there's ever too much violence in a Hellraiser film, or at least if there is, I certainly haven't found it. So
yeah, I totally agree. It's like some of my favorite moments are the bits where you're like, that's a lot of gore, that's like really, really intense. Like I think my favorite moment, and it still kind of makes me feel a bit squeamish, is in the second one where the patient has been brought onto the mattress. Like, it's quite near the start, and that's how we get Julia back. But like that whole sequence is horrific, and there's some incredible ones in the first film too. But like, I think the more of that, the better. It should feel mean, it should feel nasty, and it should be like horrible and I want to say torturous, but I'm not sure if I actually mean that specifically. But I think it should be prolonged, and there should be suffering, and it shouldn't just be hacking and slashing and just. Because in the third one, it felt like people were just being dispatched very quickly, and I'm like, no, I think it's more satisfying when someone's sort of messed with a little bit as well.
It should mean something, and it should feel I think I've used the word transgressive a lot for Hellraiser, but like it should feel dangerous, shouldn't it? You should be like, oh, should I really see, and that is really because there is such a sort of the way that, for instance, sex is viewed culturally and indeed by ratings boards, which is sort of the main thing we're talking about here, much more harshly, or rather with maybe harsh is not the word, but it's focused on this, but a lot more time is sort of deliberating about it. And so of course when you then mix it with violence, that people become very, very uncomfortable, and that is so that I feel like there's a certain easy way taken out, which is the filmmaker stop saying, well, that this is a franchise which has focused so much on the mix of pleasure and pain, but we really don't want to have any trouble with the ratings board, so maybe let's just put that other thing over to the side and just deal with this one. And it's after the second film really that is the that it feels like an easy way out, which is not to say that we that there has to be loads of like violence and indeed sexual violence or those two things running side by side with each other. No, of course it doesn't have to be that every film or every horror film is dealing with those films, but it does feel incredibly thematically appropriate for a series about characters that are summoned to take people to the heights of pleasure and pain. And at this point it's just sort of given up on. They do the sex sort of over there. You can have a dream sequence of Angelique having sex with Merchant or indeed with Jacques earlier on, but at no point really are they willing to go anywhere with it. And so we're left with some admittedly pretty cool scenes, but I don't know. Does that make,
I feel like I think that's part of the reason why I was hopeful during the first section of the film, because we had a little bit more of the sort of there was like a little bit of the sexual element involved, because Angelique and Jacques were getting it on. Meanwhile, the Duke was had been like murdered outside, and I was like, that kind of juxtaposition, that's kind of great. I'm into that. And I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe we're going to go back to some of that and explore a little bit more of that. Like, I don't need to see like torture porn stuff, but like even just an implication of the fact that we're not just always talking about pain. And I think that's what Angelique kind of embodies. We get the sort of the sensuality of teasing and like kind of like the slow burn kind of nature of that as well. And I'm like, that it feels like they don't know how to put them together, so they've gone, okay, so the woman can be the sexy one who entices people and who tempts people, and Pinhead can be the aggressive one who does all the like the suffering and the attacks and the brutal stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, why can't we have both in one person? And is it because is that just too scary? We're not sure where the line is, or we're worried that we're gonna put something out there that people will be like, well, I can't believe you put that in the film. It's never gonna make it through, whatever rating system it needs to go through, or like, yeah, it just feels like there were things that were able to be touched upon in the first couple of films where you could see like these two things being blurred, whereas I feel like they've almost had to like separate them into two entities in order to still kind of cover their bases, and that's why I think it's quite nice that there was a bit of sexual tension between Angelique and Pinhead. That's kind of great actually, and I think there should be more of that. I absolutely, and it just, as you say, I think there's a certain element of not wanting to ruffle, but but also just if we make a film that's too uncommercial, we won't make the buck that we want to, basically, and that's not the spirit that I just feel like there's again we're talking about 20 years later now, but you get this whole sort of people say that you'd never get away with this, that, and the other anymore, and I don't think that's remotely true. Actually, even like I'm not talking about the mix between sort of sex and violence and stuff, but you think of I'm not going to spoil Obsession for anyone, but there is a particular moment of violence in that film which is astonishing.
in its you know in the way it works. And also, that we've had films like Terrifier 1, 2, and 3, and whatever people think of those films, whether you like them or not, I don't think is the point. I think that they released films into US cinemas saying we're not even going to ask for a rating, because we know what we're going to get back, and they're hugely popular. And I don't think that they're dealing in the same. In fact, it's not. I don't think they're not dealing with what Hellraiser is, because that however violent Terrorizer might be, it's essentially it's just focused on showing you these elaborate deaths. Whereas as we've said before, the hope for us was that Hellraiser can be aiming for something a bit more cerebral. But it just goes to show that, for all of the worries sort of people have, there's if you make the film, you let people make the film they want to make, hopefully you can get it out there. And, I just think maybe that it was just a time of people being so, as much as people say it about now, I don't think it's the same. I think then, so worried about, that we'd just had, in the 80s, the video nasties, stuff in the UK, loads of editing of horror films in the US in the late 80s, with like Friday the 13th from like 6 or 7 onwards would get, sent back and said, no, loads cut out before you get your R rating, so I think there's just a lot of, trepidation, and also just bank balances not letting people take any risks at this point. So shall we move into the future? So back to the beginning of the film and the end of the film, where we have Merchant 200 years, or 150 years in the future now. We go 200 and then 150. And he's on a space station, which is, of course, where everyone expected the franchise to end up just 4 films in. If it works for Leprechaun, I guess it works for Pinhead as well. And here we are in space. Now, I think it'd be really easy to say that idea is just daft. And I do think and it, of course, it also is a bit or a lot, depending on your proclivity for this sort of thing. Why is my Hellraiser in space? And in the theatrical cut, I do think it's going from those credits with nothing going on in the background to just here's a space station. Is a bit like there's in the work print edition, you don't see space until we get there. It follows sort of, so there's sort of when you see Merchant get killed in the present, there's sort of, he wakes up in the future like it was a dream, like it is in the and that I think is cooler, because you're like pulling the rug from under people's feet. But nonetheless, here we are. Here's the cut that everyone gets to see, and here we are back in the future. I mean, I know you knew going in that this was going to happen. Did you approach that element of it with, just oh my God, a lot of trepidation, or, how did you feel about that? And how did you feel once we got into this end section and it was sort of, heading along, really?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't know we were going to, kick off in space. That's not what I thought was going to happen. I figured space was the end. So, it's interesting that they've done this sort of bookend with it, because I totally think that starting in the past would have been a better way to do it. But, this is what they've done. I because I knew that there was a space element to it, I definitely went in going, just let it do what it wants to do, and then we can think about whether or not we like it. I was totally fine with it at the start, and I think that was because I went in being like, okay, it's okay. There's only one element of it, and hopefully it won't jump the shark. But I do think that the very end is is very silly. But I also kind of like the fact that it is taken a long time to kind of master this idea of creating this infinite light box thing. So, like, I appreciate how far it spans, and I think it just kind of it gives it a level of like, this would not have been possible when he first made the box. This is clearly not possible in the 90s, but he was getting there. He was coming close. He needed 350 years and several generations of his bloodline in order to get to this point. And I think it earns its payoff to an extent, but yeah, it is. I like that it's quite well set up as well. So by this point, Paul Merchant knows exactly what he's doing. He's planned everything down to the with the exception of telling anybody else on the ship what the heck's going on. And that was, if maybe he'd had a conversation with someone and let them know this is what the plan is, and maybe he'd put the team together in order to do it, maybe there'd be less there was a little bit problematic. He lost people because he hadn't had conversations with them about what's going on. So we very much have it could have been derailed, but then if everybody knew everything all the time, then I guess there's not much drama behind that.
Yeah, but it is sort of it's sort of a trope, isn't it, that a character just will not at any point when they're doing this hugely elaborate thing just bring others in on it. And again, I get it, because you need to have this sort of lone warrior standing tall against the forces of darkness and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's if it just, I don't know, you get a sense that he's someone really important, because that seems to be the situation. You think at a certain point, getting a crack team together to help all build this together, who are well aware of the risks, rather than him taking over a station, having to get essentially the space police to come and arrest him, and then him just to tell his story to one character, just to set up a sort of as you say, a bookend way of telling the story. It works only as a device rather than as a sensible narrative for everyone to follow.
Yeah. But the moment when we jump back into space as well, like at the end of the 90s section, we it's so quick, and it just comes back to him in this little interrogation room, and it's Rimmer, I think, the woman he's speaking to, who's basically like, okay, I've heard enough, essentially. And I was like, oh, so they were sat in that room for about an hour hearing him tell his whole like backstory, and then they went, no, that's enough. And it feels very abrupt, but that feels like it happens a lot throughout the film anyway. Like it feels like we kind of jump, and then they go, okay, we've done all we need to do to set up the story for the 90s. Let's just jump ahead. So yeah, it is quite like you get a little whiplash every time it moves to a different section of the film.
Yeah, you definitely do, and also where this isn't a long film anyway, and it has 3 different stories to tell, and part of this particular story is at the beginning of the film, it just feels like by the time we get here at this point, it's like, will everyone just move as fast as possible, please? So we get the story told, and then, he uses the robot, before they arrive, he's used the robot to summon the Cenobites, and then all we really have is a group of like, less well-developed Marines from the Aliens franchise turn up to basically be as, sort of one-dimensional as they can, and then to just get dispatched in a series of, all right ways, sort of, very sort of tried and tested sort of murders. Although the Angelique Mirror one, I don't know whether it's brilliantly dumb, but it's a cool idea. It doesn't make any sense, but cool. I'm here for it. And Angelique now is in full sort of Cenobite mode, and I think her and the twins here are more than fitting replacements for the Cenobites from the first and second film. I think they look really cool, and it's a shame that Angelique, almost this transformation, at least in this cut, is reduced to being a silent character almost. It feels like at this point, no, thanks very much for your service, back to Pinhead. We go, But I don't know how. Did you like the Cenobites when they appear in this section?
Yeah, I think they look really cool, and I agree that they feel it feels more like the Cenobites from the earlier films, and thankfully makes up for the atrocities that came about in the third one. Oh, well, with the exception of the Discman one, obviously we love him. He's great.
Fantastic.
She lied.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think but it is a shame to have lost someone who was so important to the rest of the film. To just be a silent character and for Pinhead to take over. And I think, I mean, is that kind of is it feels like a metaphor for what we've lost from the first two films.
Mm-hmm.
Like Angelique kind of, for me, was starting to embody a little bit more of the kind of crossover between sexuality and suffering. And it feels like they've gone, you can sit down now, love.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Pinhead. He's looking after this. Don't worry about it. And it is a shame to lose that. But they do look really cool.
They do look cool.
And it's cool. It's cool to see her in like Cenobite version, because I think there's a line that Pinhead says something along the lines of we must show them our true selves, or we must
we show ourselves as we truly
like
are. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And so I was like, yes, that's great. We've seen her as just a regular person, because obviously she's inside the body of this girl that was brought in right at the start. But very cool to have a full transformed Cenobite for the end. But a shame to lose her impact in every other way.
Yeah. I'm gonna do my last sort of link to the work print here, which is that if anyone does, because I've spoken about it a little bit, if anyone does want to watch it, it is on the Bloodline disc that Arrow released. I don't know whether they're available separately or whether you can only get them as the box set, but you can hear here. So Angelique does have some dialogue in this bit. And the ending is quite different. I think actually I won't go into that. There is a different ending here. She does have some dialogue, and also Valentina Vargas's voice in the work print cut is her own. It's not overdubbed, and that's from the beginning to the end of the film. I think her original voice works much better. It is bizarre to me that they cut it out, other than she does have quite a strong accent, but I don't think she's remotely difficult to understand, and it just counts again to making a decision for the film that was not in the film's best interest, but because it fit what would be seen as a more commercial idea. If you can see the work print cut, you can hear Valentina's original vocal delivery, and I think it's less it's a little bit more grounded than what we get in the theatrical cut, and it has a different ending, but I won't give the different ending away. It comes to, at the end, this sort of standoff between Merchant and Pinhead, and again, the sort of the exact ramifications, goal here, it's sort of there, but it's not very clearly defined as to why exactly a enormous prison of light would vanquish Pinhead, other than light equals good and Pinhead equals bad equals darkness. I think that's sort of it. But there's some cool dialogue. Do you know what? Actually, we haven't spoken about Chatterer Dog at all before we go.
Oh yeah,
we haven't spoken, and I feel like we'd be remiss to not give Chatterer Dog a little. I don't know if that's his official name or not. It's his name now. What did you think about Pinhead's bestest boy?
Cenobite's best friend. We love that.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. He's so creepy looking. Like, I think whenever you have animals like in sort of like a horror franchise, and they're done really, really well, they can be so creepy. Like I don't know, is it meant to be like the Chatterer Cenobite, or is this just a completely separate thing?
I don't know.
Because it's interesting that it's got a similar name.
Oh, I don't know if that's its name. I'm just decided it's Chatterer Dog. I have absolutely no idea. The Chatterer sort of design is sort of the only one, and I'm not saying it's the Chatterer character. I think that character sort of, doesn't really return after the second one properly. But that idea of a character that looks or behaves or sounds that way is something they return to on and off. And I'm just calling it that here because it does the noise, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
But I don't think, it's a sort of, it comes across as just I think a bit of fun in the film, and I don't think it hurts it. I think it's a kind of, but I think it kind of works here with the tone of the film. It kind of works that Pinhead's got a dog, so because why not? And I think it looks reasonably good as well.
Yeah, I think so too. We don't there's no sort of I don't know if maybe it shouldn't be a dog, because aren't dogs kind of meant to be like the embodiment of good in terms of all dogs are good dogs, or well, maybe not, but I feel like thematically dogs tend to represent good. So it's interesting that there is a demonic one.
Well, it's not. It's not all dogs go to heaven here. It's all dogs go to the labyrinth or something like that. So
yeah.
I think it's maybe there's we're assuming that within the Order of the Gash, if that is even a thing that really even exists still in this film, that it's person exclusive, but maybe that's not the case. There is a whole range of Cenobite animals just waiting for their turn to turn up and to do some damage. If indeed he is even a dog, I mean, maybe he's something else, maybe that has been so warped by the sort of the rights of the Cenobites that he now resembles what he does. But I think the effect looks okay, and they do get to do a in space body explosion on it, so thumbs up,
it's
I guess.
fun.
So
yeah.
So sorry, I did digress because I thought we couldn't go.
Can't not mention the doggo. Yeah.
No, I think we've done very well to get this far into the future element without. I think you did very well talking about a character called Rimmer without, giving into a sort of base instinct to make any sort of.
Well, I can't say that I didn't do that in real life though at the time. So.
No, but that will be the last.
But I'm very respectful, and it didn't even cross my mind during our conversation, actually.
I'm pleased to hear it. Well, we'll have no more said about the character of Rimmer. Let's just go in really deep now on the ending. I'm going to get really anal about it now. And but we'll probably have to move along a bit of a lick because we are coming towards the end of the episode. But you won't hear any more from me about it. So moving on, well done us. We have this final confrontation between Merchant and Pinhead, where again Pinhead gets some really, really awesome dialogue here. Including he says a line that I think actually when I think of Pinhead quotes, a lot of them come from this movie, and one of them here. He says, I think Merchant says to him, "And what do you believe in?" And he says, "Nothing. I am so exquisitely empty." And I don't know whether that fits the character, but it's a super cool line. So
it's very
I'm
cool.
all here for it. And the end is, Merchant has tricked Pinhead. He's actually on an escape shuttle. He's used lights to trick Pinhead that he's there. And as, he escapes with Rimmer, the station fulfills its purpose. It creates its huge perpetual light trap. And Pinhead is in a really lovely bit of special effects work, actually. I love what's done to him here, where parts of his face sort of, come away, and his last line is "Amen," which is kind of cool. And there's just this big explosion, and you see this escape shuttle go off, and then the film just ends. There is no sort of like epilogue coda. Maybe we see if the characters are no. It just finishes. No. What were your thoughts on the ending?
When that happened and it was like explosion, roll credits, I laughed out loud because I was like, what do you mean? Why are you just stopping right there? It was wild. And, you know, I've said constantly throughout it feels like whiplash as you kind of get thrown into the next section. And that's exactly what happens here at the end as well. I'm just trying to, it just would have been interesting to have seen, I don't know, just anything of the two that got away in the little escape pod, just to be like, oh yeah, we did it. Thank goodness, or whatever. Yeah. Like, we don't get any of that. It's so abrupt, like so many moments throughout the film. And I cackled and went, okay.
Yeah. You sort of think that if at any point after the explosion you, like, I don't know, yawned or just were distracted by something in the corner of the room, you'd look back and the credits would be there and you think, what rewind, what? It feels like, you know, the film's like 84 minutes, almost precisely, I think. And you just feel like the final brief to the edit was, do not hit 85 minutes. We don't want a 90-minute film. We do not want an 85-minute film. You get in there, you get out, we make some cash, and we all run away before anyone realizes what we've done, you know? And it just does speak to the fact that, you know, not you know, the moment of a conclusion is just enough, isn't it? You know, there doesn't need to, who cares about what happens to the characters after this? It's dumb. Pinhead's blown up in the big space-like prison. We got away with it, guys. Let's just, you know, get out of here as quick as possible. And it's all, you know, it's quite a spectacular moment that then just fizzles by a lack of caring about anything else, isn't it?
Yeah. It's almost as if they think that getting rid of Pinhead was enough closure for everybody. And I'm like, but no, we've been following the merchant Le Marchand like family throughout this whole thing. It would just be nice to kind of get a little bit of a, thank goodness we've done it. Like, even if it was just like as they fly off into space, going back to Earth, whatever the heck they were doing, they just say, oh, you know, this is, I'm so glad that this actually was successful, and now I can live my life, and the rest of my bloodline isn't fucked by this like this box that was made many years ago. You know, like. Yeah. I feel like it could even have just been like 2 sentences. We're not even going to get into the 85-minute mark. I promise you we won't. Yeah, it won't be 90 minutes either. So, yeah, it's very, very abrupt and feels very like, wait, where's my closure? Just exploding Pinhead was not, that's not real closure for me.
Yeah. You also think, like, if you'd told, you know, not that Clive was completely absent from the making it, as I say, his executive producer, he was involved in the story, but you just get a sense that if after filming Hellraiser 1 you'd told Clive Barker, or really anyone involved in the film, that at the end, in 3 films' time, this character that isn't even the sort of main focus of that first film would be in space inside a big space lament configuration filled with light getting blown up. You know, they're just, you know, come on. You know, even if you'd come from the future and said, guys, look, I'm here to prevent, you know, and they're whatever, you know. No, really, you know, if you offered that information and the lottery numbers for that week, they wouldn't try the lottery numbers, you know. So, what can you do? You just wonder how, as I say, you know, I don't think this is a bad film. I think there's a lot to like about it. There's an awful lot that feels... you know, unfulfilled about it. It's by no means a great movie, but I do think it's at the very least an enjoyable one. And I would say, despite the sort of condition it's been left in, it's a decent enough one that you can have a good time with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I enjoyed it, even the bits where I was like, I don't like the decisions that they've made, but it was the parts where it worked were surprisingly coherent, but there were quite a few moments where it wasn't, and I was like, it's okay. I'm still having a nice time. It's still, you know, it's abrupt in some points, and it's a little bit like half baked sometimes, but like, yeah, for the most part, at least they didn't do number 3 again.
Yeah.
Like,
It just doesn't look good on the poster, does it, that review? At least it's not number 3, is not, it's an endorsement for nothing, really. But in reality, it's true, and you can't fault it for a sense of ambition. Had it been under a different studio, maybe, or definitely, really, had it been under a different studio, had had it been given the budget it maybe deserved, had it been, or given the director being given the chance to make, the film they wanted to, Peter Atkins' script to be fully realised, we'd have ended up with a very different movie. But, as with anything, in these situations, there are certain people that are only interested, in cash, or using cash to be the fucking people that they are, and this is what you end up with. But it could be worse. There's the other review for it. It could be worse. That feels very. I don't want to end on that note, actually, because I think it's a more fun film than that, and I would. It's one I do rewatch, and I think there's plenty in there to like about it.
Absolutely. I also think that the story where they're going, like what they're trying to do, is actually great. Like, I love the idea of, let's find out where the box came from. Let's follow them trying to find a way to, like, undo the mistake that was made. And it's not something that you can just fix really, really easily. And it takes generations of knowledge and potentially even, like, technology that wasn't available. I think that's really interesting. Like, what a great idea. It's just that, the people who were making the final decisions on this made some very strange final decisions, and, like, it could have been great. And it is, I think that's the thing, is, like, it has a lot of potential, and there's lots of really great moments in it, and the arcing of the story is really interesting. Yeah, it is just... It's not quite there.
It's compromised,
but still
isn't it?
fun.
It's hugely compromised. And even, as we said earlier, even if we could see Kevin Yeager's original cut of the film, I doubt... I think we'd come away a little bit less like that didn't completely make sense and felt rushed. But I do think that equally, you wouldn't come away from it going, that's the best one since the first one, But it's a fun old time. And as you say, that where it really, really does win is that in concept it's super cool. It's super cool, and I really like what you said there about sometimes to fix and it's not even an error that was done on purpose, what Le Marchand does by building the box, but to fix this thing that your ancestors have done takes a great deal of time and a great deal of sacrifice, isn't a bad arc either, is it? So there we are. Just before we get to our sort of conclusive element, I just wanted to mention a couple of cast members from the middle section of the film. So I like to be able to tie it to other things, particularly other horror things. And in the midsection, Merchant's wife is played by Kim Myers. And Kim Myers is actually will be known to horror fans as Jesse's the main love interest and lead character in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And it's really lovely to see her in Bloodline giving a really, I think, not giving a huge amount to do, but giving a nice performance here. I think she's, she gives a good performance. I think she's, got a... I remember watching this and immediately, having seen Elm Street 2, seeing it was her, because I think she's got such a striking look, and really lovely to see her turn up here in this. And also in their son, Jack Merchant here, is played by Cortland Mead, who had quite a few sort of roles. I think he did quite a lot of work as a child. I don't know about his later career, but I really remember him from the TV miniseries of Stephen King's The Shining, where he plays Danny Torrance. And I haven't watched that miniseries for a really long time. And we'll digress a tiny bit here, but because we do. That would be another really interesting thing for you and I to sort of watch the Kubrick's Shining and King's miniseries, because famously King hated Kubrick's movie. I don't think that's remotely a surprise to anybody. He's been very vocal about it over the years. And so he made this mini-series of The Shining in the 90s where he wanted to keep it really, really close to the book. I really loved it growing up. When I saw it when I was like, I don't know, 13 or whatever. I do wonder whether it really, really shows its, whether it stands the test of time, because obviously Kubrick's film is not a straightforward adaptation of King's novel at all, and I get why King dislikes it so much. And because I was such a Stephen King fan growing up, I was sort of like, oh, I'm on Stephen King's side, damn that Kubrick movie. I recognise Kubrick's film as the masterpiece it is now, but I did really love the miniseries, and I'd love us to do a watch of both of them, actually, because I wonder whether the miniseries holds up at all, or whether it's sort of, I was seeing it for a particular, set of eyes that I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
I'd be up for that. That sounds great.
That would be really cool. And yeah, Cortland Mead there playing the role of Danny Torrance. So, Hellraiser Bloodline comes out the cinema. I don't think it does particularly well, and it certainly doesn't review well at all. It gets, sort of negative to scathing reviews. And as much as I don't necessarily agree with that, I get why it would be seen as an easy film to sort of, go for and, bring the horror genre down a peg at this point, when it was, it seemed like all critics were taking their moment to really give horror, what for. But, I feel like in the, nowadays, for people that like the franchise, it's, it's more fondly remembered as something that could have been great, and that's where we leave it, I think, really, before we head off into the direct to DVD inevitability of the following entries.
Wow, I'm looking. That was very ominous. I was like, oh, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? I don't know.
I mean, I think it would be. I think there's. I guess I would say I think there's still some. Despite what some people think, I still think there's some good stuff to come. Okay. And there's also some sweet suffering for us to go through too. I can promise you that as well.
Seems only fair. That's what it's all about.
Thank you all so much for joining us for our chat through the past, present, and future of Hellraiser Bloodline. We hope you're enjoying the podcast and you're enjoying our Hellraiser entries as well. We will be back in 2 weeks with, and remember, homework for everyone now. It's not just one film we're watching in the next 2 weeks. It is both Hellraiser Inferno and Hellraiser Hellseeker. So get those watched, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time to continue the Hellraiser franchise and head further into the darkness. I'll hand you over to Sarah now to sign us off. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Sarah.
Oh, that was awesome. I mean, I always look forward to our chats about these films. So this is, even films that aren't quite hitting the mark, it's still a pleasure to chat with you about them and to watch them, and yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever the next two have in store. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Maybe you're listening on YouTube, or you might be listening over on Spotify, both of which have the video version as well. Or you can listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, and that's the audio only. You can also watch the episodes on our website, uncannycollective.co.uk, and come and find us over on Instagram, uncanny_collective, or you can find Uncanny Steve, which is Steve Fitzgerald, or me, Sarah Lynham, via our handles, which you'll see in the bottom of our videos. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear. Yeah, it's either here on here.
It's going to be one.
I can never remember while I'm doing this bit of it. I'm like, I should just remember which side it is so I can know for next time. Anyway, come and find us. Come and talk to us. Tell us what you think of the episodes. Tell us what you think of the Hellraiser franchise. Tell us what you're looking forward to. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what you'd like to hear us chat about. Video games, books, films, theatre, anything within the horror genre. We're more than happy to have a look at what we're doing next, and we'd love to take requests. We've done so in the past where we watched Fright Night, and that was an amazing suggestion. So more of those, please. We're keeping a little list of the ones that are coming through. And subscribe, comment, share, repost, do all of those things. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for more Into the Darkness. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.